Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Traveller RPG headquarters. You can find our Facebook group by searching our name in the Facebook search tool or find the link in the video description below. Thank you for participating in our second annual Mayday Traveller Day event. It's a day we celebrate travel and all its offshoots for all the fun times it's given us. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and today I'm happy to introduce Mr. Marc Miller of Far Future Enterprises. Welcome, Marc.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, considering we're under a global pandemic, but yes.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
My father was in the Navy, and so I moved all over the place for the first 12 years of my life. I was born in Maryland. I lived in Hawaii. I lived in Connecticut. We ended up in Illinois when he retired, and I've been in Illinois almost ever since. So,
oh, fantastic! And what did you do before you got into game design?
I went to college. I was in the Army in Vietnam. I got out. I was totally unmotivated to do anything, so I just went back to college. And I fell in with some really great guys who were gamers. Frank Chadwick and Rich Banner and Lauren Wiseman. They knew far more about gaming than I did, but they ran the games club at Illinois State University. I just find this fascinating. You can't learn games unless somebody would teach you. We all know that. We're all, you can't. And this little game club at Illinois State had a program where they said, come on, it's only 10 people, but they said, if you want to learn how to play a game or games, we'll teach you. And I had no idea. Literally, I had tried D-Day 15 years before. I was maybe 12 and couldn't make hide nor hair of it. So they paired me with a geography professor in his office after hours. And I, of course, picked France 1940 from SPI. I thought that'd be a great game to learn, not knowing what I was doing at all. And he sat down and explained every little bit with me. We read through the rules. He explained what this really meant, what a zone of control means, what movement factors are, what turns are, and movement phases. He was very patient with me. And we played one turn of that game. And at the end of that evening, I knew how to play war games, and by extension, everything else. So that must have been 1973, a long time ago. But that got me into games. Within a month or two, I was designing games along with some of these other guys. We took existing rules and modified them. We came up with new rules. We came up with new maps. We just had a wonderful time. The university had a program that they wanted innovation in education, and that game club turned into a project at the university, designing games for teachers for classroom use. I must have worked for the next 4 years, off and on, helping administer games, often role-playing games, although we didn't realize it, and training situations, teaching situations in classrooms.
Were these set up to be like to support whatever the subject of the class was?
Oh, exactly. I remember one planning session that we talked to a professor, and he wanted a game on deforestation of the American Northwest. And our first question was, are you for it or against it? Because that would influence how we were going to write the game. I don't remember his answer. We had, I did my game Chaco was for a Latin American history class. It was a total failure in terms of trying to teach students how to do this, but it was a great war game. we did the 1896 presidential campaign in a history class, and had two sections in the same class. And one of them, 1896, was the Cross of Gold speech, and we provided all this information for the students, and these two parallel sections, one to the left of the aisle and the right of the aisle. And one of them, the results came out almost exactly historical, and on the other, they went way off into fantasy. So, which shows how much history is not foreordained. I did presidential nominating conventions for several years for one of the teachers. Frank Chadwick, whose background is in communications, speech communication, did a variety of games. One of them was on bond issue. It was the people, the participants, were trying to influence ultimately voting from the public. It's all abstracted. And so the players would have to, quote, give a speech, which is apply their 10 influence points across several issues about cost and social good and all that sort of stuff. It just scared the players completely when they said they had to give a speech.
No.
So they were very happy when they realized that it just meant allocating points instead of actually doing something so frightening.
That's awesome.
That gaming, Bloomington, Illinois, does not understand how important and influential it was in the history of gaming. It was a little hot spot that nobody here knew. The local newspaper did an article about the importance of Bloomington Normal in the world, and listed the top 10 exporters in the community. And of course, the first one was Archer Daniels Midland, which is a grain exporter, and they export, hundreds of millions of dollars of grain. And so that was at the top of the list. And then it worked its way down to some little place that was sewing canvas grain bin covers and exporting about $12,000 worth of them to Europe. We didn't make the list. Game Designers Workshop at that point. We'd been around for 4 or 5 years by that time. I knew we were exporting $500,000 worth of goods every year to Europe and Japan, but it doesn't show up in the reports, and there's no way they could have known, and so we just got ignored.
How did it evolve from a kind of after school gaming club to an actual business? Did you guys sit around and say, hey, this would be cool to do this for a living, or did the other guys already have a business and invite you in or recruit you, or how did that go?
Rich Banner and Frank Chadwick had been, at the time, and we're talking the early 70s, there was this holy grail of board wargaming that somebody should take SPI or Avalon Hills Stalingrad and make it not one map but 4 maps, big, a monster game. And SPI had talked about it for a while, but nobody had done anything. And Rich and Frank Rich is a cartographer among many of his talents, had produced a 5-map Russian front map. And they had fiddled with things and counters and all that. And they said, we should do this. And they thought they would do it. And invited all the game club people to participate. And we, did all kinds of things to make it work. That was just a one-off project. Let's just put an ad and see if we can sell this game. And so we did that. And in that process, Rich and Frank decided they wanted to start a game publishing company. Let's do more games. And I was the third wheel they asked me in. I was very flattered. Then they turned and asked Lauren Wiseman in. And that formed the core of our little place. Very quickly, we moved from packaging games in my apartment to renting an office in uptown Normal, Illinois. We were there for 22 years. It was a rat race. It was fun. It was a wonderful time. But boy, did we work hard.
I like to hear the success stories of well, first I like to hear about gaming clubs in schools, because I really feel that it's important to kind of cultivate gamers, the gaming community, because a lot of people don't know about it, first of all, that it's even a thing. And then once they find out about it, like you said, somebody needs to teach you what a turn is, or whatever, because the instructions aren't always well written or whatever. And the community comes to some sort of consensus based on their interpretation of the rules, and passes that on. But yeah, I believe that cultivation of players in a game or in a gaming environment is super important. So I'm glad to hear whenever I hear about gaming clubs and stuff, and that's part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, is to try to bring more people into the hobby, just gaming hobby in general. But of course, Traveller is my favorite, so I'm trying to make more Traveller players. But yeah, I'm glad to hear. I hope more schools do that. I've heard, my wife's a teacher, and I've heard some of the local schools have actually pretty big game groups that I was surprised to hear.
Every kid in American schooling encounters games in their, somewhere in their process. And when I was a kid, it was Monopoly. You may not play Monopoly after that, but everybody has some time when they sit down and play Monopoly with their friends. Today, every kid has a time when they sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons, and it might not be the real Dungeons and Dragons, but it's somebody's interpretation of it. And it works for some people, and it doesn't work for others.
Mm-hmm.
They do that, and they do Magic. And for some, it just catches on. It becomes their focus, what they spend their attention on. Some kids are just dedicated to sports or track or baseball or whatever. That's their focus, their life. Some kids, it's games.
Or some aspect of games. Like, I've seen people really excel at like miniature painting, but maybe they don't play so much.
Yes, exactly right. Or playing Traveller by themselves.
Right.
Or building worlds or something.
Yeah, that was me on vacations. I would take I would know my parents are going to bore me to death, so I would take my little black books, and I would spend summer vacation wherever we were, whenever I was bored, making subsectors.
That's yes. Games have also changed, because back in those days when I started in gaming, it was not an accepted hobby, and there were a lot of people who thought that Dungeons and Dragons was the devil's work.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was even movies made about it.
Yes. And today it's good, clean fun, good, clean family fun. So who would have thought?
Right. So you started out with war games. When did you kind of switch over to the role playing in your personal gaming life?
So I started out with war games, and this is board war games, which is a very obscure portion of gaming, but it was the major part in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm. Playing Risk, probably, and that's pretty well known.
That was pretty well known. We knew that we were far deeper than Risk. So, naval war games, kind of miniature sort of games with counters. We had a format. We had a map and a sheet of counters and a book of rules and some charts, so you could pretty much do what you wanted within that structure. So there were a variety of gaming places, groups around the world, around the country. One of them was Michigan, and Detroit Metro Gamers was big into board war games, but they discovered Gary Gygax's Dungeons and Dragons. So then somebody with that visited us and showed us this cool thing they had found. And somebody immediately ran downstairs from our offices to the little print shop, copy shop below us, and made like 5 copies of the Dungeons and Dragons books because we couldn't get it right away.
Right.
We're very respectful of intellectual property. We had ordered them, but didn't have them yet, so we made copies. And as soon as the copies came in, we threw away the real books. We threw away the copies. Dungeons and Dragons took us by storm. We had a staff of 4 or 5, and some gamers who participated with us and played with us. And after about 2 weeks, Frank Chadwick, the president of the company, just said, "You can't play Dungeons and Dragons when the sun's up." We were getting nothing done. People were just playing D&D all day long at the big gaming table in the front, in the common room at the company, and nobody was getting any work done. So they still played as much Dungeons and Dragons, but it was after hours then. But I think it showed how much we could embrace Dungeons and Dragons immediately. We had all this graphic material. We could make maps of fantasy countries and continents. We could make diagrams or dungeons. We could put that all together. We had a good time doing that.
Is that what drew you to it? Kind of the tinkering ability to do your own, kind of do your own thing, come up with your own world. I mean, what was it that got you hooked to RPGs?
Every one of us had our own continent. Every one of us had our own universe that we played with, and everybody else played in that. And that was part of it, that you would play in somebody else's universe or on their continent, so that then they would play in yours, and you got to administer it. We were much more game masters and designers than we were players. Gary did 2 things that were important to role-playing. One, he made characters digital with these numbers that are strength and dexterity and all that. The other thing is, and I don't think he quite realized the other thing, the dungeon is basically a flowchart of what you're going to do. It's just a bunch of paths that you take and challenges along the way. It's much more structured than just wandering a continent. But we always wanted to build continents and explore them like explorers and find things.
So, we'll go on.
Yeah, and so after 6 months of this, I was the science fiction oriented person at the company, and I just said, nobody's doing this in science fiction. I want to do this in science fiction. And they said, sure, go ahead. They were playing their fantasy, or they were doing deeper stuff, which was war games and historical things and all that.
That kind of segues into my next question, which was going to be, why did you choose a sci-fi RPG? Was it to fill a market niche, or realize your own gaming dream, or a combination of both?
Today we think of businesses as driven by business plans and everything else. And we had no idea of that. We just wanted to publish games because it made enough money to keep us alive, to keep on publishing and playing games again. There was no marketing plan or concept for Traveller. It was just, I wanted to do literally Dungeons and Dragons in space, and I did. except it was not fantasy Dungeons and Dragons in space. It was trying to be realistic in space. I remember writing Traveller with the 3 D&D little books, wood grain books in front of me because they were the format. First book was characters. Okay, you're going to play this game, you have to know how to do characters. And so then I was making up how you do characters because Dungeons and Dragons had characters. D&D really changed the world when it came out. I'm pleased that Traveller has had the staying power it has.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, there's so much content for it too, but like independent, like people make artwork, fan art, and like the Traveller map. I mean, that's an endeavor.
Oh, absolutely. Because it fills that need we have for something. I know some people, I've been to things like car auctions where people will buy a Corvette for $240,000. Well, great, they've got money and they do that. And that's what their life is about. But a lot of people, an important part of their life is Traveller because it just fills something for them. They can interact with people about it. They can do stuff with it alone. They can build their worlds. They can build their sector. Everybody wants to build a sector. Everybody wants to do that.
What's your favorite aspect? Looking back, what's your favorite aspect or aspects of Traveller?
Yeah, I made Traveller, and I say this sometimes, that Traveller was not meant to be some deep thing you had to puzzle out. It was supposed to, I wanted it to reflect people's own experiences. That instead of, I wonder how Martians do things or why people do things, everything in Traveller is reflective of what we do in our own lives. That's not very... So, for example, somebody will say, oh, I created this world, and the numbers don't make sense. And so that can't be right. That must be a flaw. And every time, they show me the numbers for the world, and I can say, okay, well, what about this? And I can give them a concrete example which reflects a world with a low atmosphere and a lot of water or whatever it is. I always think that, okay, I'm trying to think of an example here. And we're getting to something that I think is important about Traveller, has been to me, is it gives you the memory stimuluses to think up great, interesting things. You roll the dice to create a world. Okay, so create a world. Make up a world for me. Sure. And people say usually a dead planet with an old civilization on it. Good. Do another one. And the next one they give me is a swamp planet with dinosaurs. And the third, okay, give me another one, I say. And they say, okay, this is cool. Is a world locked to the star and it's got a twilight zone. And by the time you get to like 7 or 8, I say, okay, now give me 100 more. And they have to rack their brains for it. Traveller gives you 100 more. It gives you 1,000 more.
Yep.
Nobody in their right mind would give a world which has 30% water on it, and the next one has 20% water. Why would you make that distinction? Well, of what importance is that distinction? Can we find a reason why it's important? The dice help us make up a wide variety of places to go visit. And each one has its own interesting twist in the hands of the game master. But nobody in his right mind would make up 2 jungle planets, and the only difference is one has a little bit more ocean than the other. Traveller lets you see those subtle differences and try and puzzle them out.
That's something that I like about it too. Is I have a weekly game that I GM, and sometimes I did all the planets according to the chart. So I just wanted it to be true to Traveller, and I didn't really go, oh, this planet should really have this or that. I just went with the rolls. Okay, so I ended up with a planet that has 4,000 people on it. That's the high tech capital of the subsector. Okay, but some people might think that's weird. But okay, the planet itself is 80% water, but it's ice. It's just a big ice ball. And so why is there a high tech hub here? And so that kind of puzzling out how to fit these things that don't seem to go together. That's kind of what I like, is coming up with that story that links these. It's like pulling some things out of a hat and making a story out of it.
Exactly, and that is. It seems like, it just seems random, but you can also imagine that someone that there could be somebody who would write a novel about visiting that world,
mm-hmm.
because it's fascinating. Why is it? Who's in charge? Are there a lot of robots? Is it automated, or is it? And there's room for a lot of story there.
Right. Why did they build this base here, of all places? Well, maybe there's natural resources, or maybe the surface is so inhospitable that they expect it's a safe place to put a high tech base because no one's going to come visit it. I don't know. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of reasons.
And there's no one answer.
And that's part of the fun, I think, of generating the subsectors and the different systems, and coming up with kind of weird, unique, alien settings to have your adventures in.
Exactly. I wanted a universe that was. I'll give this. I look at Fated Sons, which is about this an oppressive religious kind of dictatorship running things, and dystopian and all that sort of stuff. You really have to get into that as the background in order to play the game. Or Games Workshop, Warhammer 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
The universe is always at war. I don't know how you keep something always at war. Traveller tries to have a universe that is understandable, that war is a spasm of violence. If it's constantly there, what are the reasons for it?
Fighting over resources, or
and don't you become exhausted? You can't really have 100 years war or 1,000 years war at the level of what we're World War II. I mean, the world, you just exhaust everything. You can have antipathy, but it doesn't have to be constant war. Anybody can play Traveller and understand immediately this kind of benign empire where people are in charge above you, but they're far enough away that they can't really make you do anything if you stay out of their way. You can wander from world to world, from place to place. It's kind of like traveling, it's kind of like playing Route 66 with Martin Miller and whatever. Every new town you go to is different, and maybe there's something interesting to do or whatever. And the players themselves are, of course, the ones who make it all interesting, because it's their responses to the challenges, and it's much more fun when they are coming up with the answers and you deal with it. I played a game once at GaryCon where it was 7 random people, and they I didn't know what they were going to do. I just said, okay, here you are, and here's this situation. And it was trying to get through a force field, and they tried, and I didn't know how to get through the force field either because I just left it to them. One of them, they would try one thing and, okay, roll the dice, and it didn't work. Okay, so then somebody come up with another answer, and they said, I'll try this. They rolled the dice, and it did work. I didn't know you could stick a spear into a force field and kind of pry it open, but they made it work, and they came up with answers, and they enjoyed the process. And I really didn't even have to know the answers because the dice dictated it. I could just manage their activity.
Right. Just improvise according to what the dice results are.
Yeah. Or it was another again at GaryCon, and people generated their characters, and there was all these naval and a low soc scout, which of course was a woman as well, a girl player. And so they're exploring a ship, and she says, we should try and go to the bridge. And so then she had to roll soc, and nobody paid any attention to her. So then immediately one of the high soc naval characters said, we should go to the bridge. And he rolled, and everybody said, yeah, that's a good idea. And they set about doing it. And it just became a trope in the game. But this player had all kinds of good ideas, and her character could not get anybody to listen to her. And everybody stole her ideas and got credit for it afterwards. I just thought, now that's what role-playing is. It wouldn't have to be Traveller. It wouldn't have to be any specific game. But that's the joy of role-playing, is of a group of people sitting around and just interacting and role-playing at life and kind of flexing their character muscles. It's one of the things that I talk about, that's why role-playing is so important for kids. Where else can some kid, young man, learn to budget money, have enough money to budget it, make plans and pursue them? All these things that are wonderful life skills, and role-playing teaches them. So that's a lot of fun. It's important.
I agree. I have a friend who was terrible at math and terrible at spelling, and through in this case it was D&D. he writing down lists of things and spending money, like you say, and all this stuff, and eventually he grokked it, and that helped him because he was actually doing English and math homework and not realizing it.
No, exactly. Or my 8-year-old grandson, we were playing Traveller, and I sent him off, and he came back. I don't know how he did it, but he had a barter character with like 22 billion credits. So he clearly was not following the books, but that's okay. We were so something, and he bought lunch for 17 credits. And it just made me glow to watch him subtract 17 from 22 billion, carrying the one all the way down. And now he had 21,900,000. He understood, he got it.
Right.
I mean, in a way that doing math homework doesn't necessarily show you. I just felt so proud that he understood what he was doing. He was using math skills that he'd learned and applying them to his, not quite the real world, but close enough.
Right. That's another cool thing about Traveller is that I didn't realize is over the past year, my players have gone out and, like, if I have something in the game, like we have a nebula, and so the next week they come back, they're like, I researched nebulas, or like, and here's what I think we should do, or I researched black holes, and here's what I think we should do. And I'm like, wow.
Yes. Exactly.
So yeah, it leads to a lot of like independent study as people find either problems they want to overcome or maybe just interesting aspects of your game world that they want to interact with. So yeah, that's a great thing. I think that Traveller has great benefit that Traveller gives to its players.
Not just Traveller, but role playing in general.
That's true. That's true. So what do you have a favorite setting, or do you have your own? Do you just do your own settings for the most part?
Well, of course, my setting is the original Traveller universe. I have all play in my universe.
Right.
I had a great time when I finished the Big Black Book several years ago, and all of Traveller was in my head with this 650-page book. This is before I broke it into 3 Liller books, but when I finished that, I just, it was like a complete immersion in the Traveller rules. And that being the case, I wrote my novel, Agent of the Imperium. And I got to show what I thought the Traveller universe was like in a way that the rules don't necessarily show you. You know, I got to talk about how people live in the universe and how they interact and all that sort of stuff. I had a great time writing that. And of course, building it against the canon of all the history we've created. For example, in the course of looking at that, of how people would actually live in we have, I came up with what I call the clipper. That you travel, you might have a fast ship, you might get on a fast liner, but people don't want to travel from capital to land, maybe 20 jumps, and change ships every jump. So clearly they would just live on the ship until it got there. And once they decide to do that, then they probably don't even stop. They just jump a week, refuel at a gas giant, jump another week.
Like
save some time. They can get there in 20 weeks instead of 40 weeks. But it took me trying to play in my own universe to figure that out, because the rules don't ever talk about clippers. That's just one example. I really had a good time writing the novel to show people how it works. And sometimes I have it's fun to write novels, it's fun to write fiction. And then I wonder, why didn't the universe think up that particular answer to some technological problem sooner?
Was there kind of a feedback loop, like you wrote some of your book, then you went, wait a minute, I need to address that in the Black Books or in the Traveller 5 edition? Maybe I need to go back.
I was aware of that. Yes, I certainly was aware of that. I was surprised. The other thing that came out of it is that I'm a real nuts and bolts, objective writer. Fantasy is not my thing. It's fiction, it's science fiction rather than fantasy. And nevertheless, in the novel, I have something called the Dakaseri, which is the legend that all of the unborn souls and all of the dead souls watch us from the stars and watch what's going on. And I put that there's interludes in this where the main character and agent is, when he's dead, he always comes back to life, but when he's dead, he's in this kind of space heaven. And it's pure fantasy. It can't be real, can it? Have you read the novel?
No, I haven't yet.
You need to read it, see? Other people need to read it. So anyway, so it has this thing of space, a place where all the dead people go after they die, and watch what's going on, but also where all the unborn are before they're born.
Do the unborn choose who they're going to be born to, like who they move into, or I mean, is it like just a pool that empties out, or how does?
It's
Got to read the book.
There's some element of choice, and there's some elements there. There's some scenes where that happens. So the other trope in Traveller is that your character die before he starts, right?
Yes, I was going to get to that in a minute, but now's a good time to talk about it.
Yeah, and so I want to do an adventure where if you create a dead character, the adventure is in space heaven instead of on a world.
Oh, that's a good idea.
The space heaven is called the audience of stars. Just all those people watching what's going on in reality, and most of them are very focused on that. They don't really have lives, and I just think it'd be fun to explore this space heaven. Can you get what's there? It'll be fun. We'll see.
Yeah, that is interesting. That gets me to the character creation question I want to ask you, because Traveller has a unique. I mean, it's known for its kind of life history trope or mechanic. And so what gave you that idea for the character creation system of doing turns and having a little life of the character before you start playing?
Dungeons and Dragons is patterned on Lord of the Rings, where you start out with your character is basically a hobbit or whatever at 18, and he's going to build his life. And it's about levels, and it's about experience points and getting better. My Traveller wanted to be a variety of people. The tropes in science fiction are not the young guy who starts out and wakes his way up to the top. It's about an eclectic group of crew who complement each other and do things. And some of them, there are a variety of levels they already have. So Traveller from its beginning was levelless. It was not about experience points and getting better. It was about adventuring and doing things and cooperating with your friends. So I needed a character generation system that would make people more than just 18. Of course, when we first started, the first thing you get is everybody wants to be an admiral. And I really couldn't tell people, no, you can't be an admiral. I had to give them the chance to do that if they wanted. But the chance that you'll die is enough to make people, you get 3 terms in, he's got some good skills and good characteristics, and if I go one more thing, I'll get another level of rank, but he also might be dead and I'd have to start over. And it really was an effective way of making people stop before they got too greedy.
So that's why the death mechanic was put in there.
Yeah.
That's an endearing thing to a lot of people. I participate on a lot of forums and stuff, and I always see people like Traveller, the only game where you can die during character creation, or I guess there's the T-shirt that says, I play Traveller, or I died during character creation.
Yeah, or the one that was the meme I saw was Oregon. Oh, in Oregon Trail, you died on the of dysentery, after a month. Oh, that's so cute. The Traveller character dies before he even gets going. So.
Right. I got disintegrated in my first term. Yeah. No, that's one of the great things. I always took my dead characters and put them in a pile for NPC use later. I never thought that it was a waste of time. Yeah. So how what inspired you? What inspired the ideas behind Traveller? Like, did you like Star Wars? Did you watch Battlestar Galactica back in the day? Like, what's your favorite TV shows or things that you think of when you think of Traveller?
Well, when I call myself a classically trained science reader. I grew up in the 60s and I read every science fiction story that came out. I knew not just the classics, but the pulp. I had access to good university libraries, and when I went to University of Illinois in Chicago for a year, I found a little bodega on Skid Row that had a box of cover-stripped Astounding magazine. This was not just, this would have been 1966. This set of pulps went back to, some of them dated to the 40s. And they were 25 cents a piece. I would buy one, read all the stories in the book on the train home. I'm a fast reader and didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But I read all of them. And at the end, I threw it away. But over the course of 2 semesters, I had read basically the entire run of Galaxy magazine. I knew all of those stories. I'm at least familiar with them. My vision for Traveller was GURPS. I thought Traveller was going to be a generic science fiction role-playing system. I was disappointed to find that most people thought of science fiction, mostly thought of Star Trek and Star Wars, and Galactica, and Babylon 5. But their interest was based on movies rather than the novels.
Right, pop culture.
Yeah. And they wanted a universe to play in. And when we started doing space fleets or a navy, we had space fleets. We had to have an enemy. And so it naturally started that we were building a future space empire for people to play in. And we come back to this thing that it was not some terrible, unjust communist dictatorship. It was just the government that was there. It was just who you might come to and help, or they might help you, or they might hinder you. Who knows? And people got to play in this kind of open-ended sandbox. The other thing is that we deliberately created that there was not a lot of authority there to get in your way. We made communication at the speed of light or the speed of transportation so that you didn't have government from the capital interfering with us a year out. It's more like being in Wild West or Spain's empire in South America than modern U.S. where I saw a great cartoon in the New Yorker, and it basically a guy in a foxhole with a machine gun, and next to him is another soldier with a walkie-talkie who says, "Yes, Mr. President. No, Mr. President." I wanted to avoid that
micromanagement by
the highest levels of government.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have today. That's not nearly as much fun.
Right. I like it. In my game, it's the faraway place, the faraway power that, like you say, doesn't bother you unless you mess with it, and it's not nefarious necessarily. You may not agree with some of the things it does, but generally speaking, my nefarious things happen by way of local megacorps, or politics.
We always have villains. We have the villains, and my campaign has villains who are constantly a problem.
My empire's it's not necessarily benevolent, but not, it's just not in the scene because it takes so long to react to anything.
The other thing that I remember is that I didn't want it to be Earth-based, and it wasn't. But it was also, I didn't want it to be, oh, Earth is this long-lost place which is magic. Earth is just this place, and it doesn't get the respect it should deserve. We're all off somewhere else, and nobody really cares.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite aspect about? What's the thing that you like to do most when you're producing content? Do you like the map making? Do you like the fiction part? Do you like coming up with a story? Do you like rules and charts? Like, what's your favorite part?
I'm much more chart than adventure oriented. Much more rules oriented. I get immersed in something about rules. I think that people want information in their rules on how this works or what its potential is. I have to say that when I started a long time ago, there were parts of the universe that daunted me, that scared me. I couldn't imagine what tech beyond Tech 15 was. It's fantastic tech, and we could say, oh, here's a fantastic tech thing, but I really couldn't figure out what the structure was. It was open-ended. We rolled 2 dice for tech from 2 to 12. Okay, 7 is about average. So 12 is pretty high. 15 is really high. What is 20? What is 100? What's 1,000? And working on this last edition on Traveller 5, I came up with with an idea of what that is. Because I don't think anybody else has a good idea of what Tech 1000 is either. So we kept it. We came up with ideas that tried to talk about what really high tech is, and the books are full of it. And I had fun writing it. And some player can pull that out and look at it, and the dice will drive him to a world that is Tech 22, and there's some clue as to what that is. And that clue should be enough spark for him or her to really put interesting puzzles in front of the players. Yeah. I like writing rules.
Rule
I
writing.
like defining things. On the other hand,
go on.
On the other hand, I'm currently working on the ancient duolith, and it's kind of Shadows-like exploring an ancient structure. And it's a lot of fun because I'm not giving the answers to how to explore it. I'm just providing the structure to explore. And, a lot of people enjoy Shadows. When you don't know where you're going and what you're doing, and you have to be cautious, and who knows what's around the next corner. That's a lot of fun. So I'm having fun doing that too.
Awesome. So you mentioned in our previous interview that actually let me take a step back from that. Obviously you're not British. So why are there two L's in Traveller?
Two reasons. The rational reason is that it distinguishes the game name enough to be interesting. Now I make everything in Traveller is 2 L's. I spell counselor with 2 L's. I spell, I've adopted that. That's fun. That's what I do. But a strong influence on me was Tubbs' Dumarest series. And he's British, or he's not. He would hate that. He was Irish. But he used 2 L's in Traveller, and I think that is the subliminal cue when I came up with the name. Of course, I had to come up with a name that wasn't star something or space something.
Right. I think
And
you
I
nailed
think
it with Traveller, personally. I mean,
it covers what we're trying to do.
I
But
can't
I
really
know
think of a
that
better
word,
title.
I think that word is used in E.C. Tubbs' Dumarest series multiple times. He calls him a traveler.
That author wrote a lot of Dumarest books. What's your favorite one? And have you read them all?
I read them all. It's the series is better in its not telling you the answer than in telling you the answer, but I think that's always true. It's been a long time since I read them. The first one is the Gas. I think it's just great space opera.
All right. Well, that's good.
He has. I have a lot of things that I took out of that. One of them is Low Passage, and the Dumarest series is just space opera. It's pulp. It is not deep literature at all. And Dumarest, in like the third or fourth book, meets somebody on a world who's from a neighboring world. And the guy is just working. I'm filling in the details because I don't remember the structure, but the guy's basically working at a low-paid job, saving money to go home to his world. And he needs to raise like 7,000 or 8,000 credits, dollars, whatever. He could take Low Passage, and he came here in Low Passage with his friend. He and his friend were going to go adventuring, and so they bought Low Passage tickets. They got to the next world. He woke up, and his friend didn't. And that's very poignant, and not at all in keeping with the structure of space opera. Swords flashing, whatever. It was an unusually sensitive understanding of the risks we face in Traveller or whatever. So I point that out because Dumarest series is not just space opera. It's some sensitive writing at times.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out. I don't have a lot of time for reading things because I'm just busy with projects, but I've been meaning to make some time. Way? Yeah, I know. I shouldn't let it get in the way. I do still have downtime, and I could be reading for enjoyment instead of just poring over technical manuals or whatever my normal reading is. Hey. And so those are a couple good ideas for me to get started on, the Agent of the Imperium and some Dumarest books. So tell me, what have you been up to for this past year? Did you go to any conventions this last year?
I go to Gamehole Con and Gary Con. They're both in Wisconsin. They're close to me. I don't go to the bigger conventions. I went to one in Texas last September. It was a last-minute invitation, and I had a good time. I enjoy talking to people about their Traveller, and they enjoy talking to me about their Traveller. So that's nice. But it just there are people whose I won't say their lives, but a good part of what they do is involved gaming, and I just think it's good, clean fun. And a wonderful way to spend your time.
Do you ever run into people who are starstruck meeting you?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's very flattering.
That's great.
I feel the same way about some of the people that I meet.
Right. Who would you feel starstruck to see? Is there like an actor?
I was starstruck. I know I was starstruck when I met Jim Dunnigan. And he was just I'll tell you. So we started the Game Designers Workshop, and there was, after 6 months or so, they were having some sort of a session at SPI, and so Frank and Rich and I said, let's go to that, and we piled in a car and drove from Illinois to New York City found the SPI's offices and showed up. And so they're, the top 2 game companies in the world. And they knew who we were. They welcomed us. We sat in at a business meeting. Literally, I slept in Jim Dunnigan's office because we stayed the night. Nobody had enough money to go to hotels. I saw playtest sessions. I talked to people who were only names to me before, and they became real people. I'm still struck by how welcoming and open-armed the companies, the people of gaming were then, and really still are today. So, talking about starstruck, I met Jim Dunnigan and Redmond Simonson, and those were high points in what I was doing.
That's awesome. So how did your let's talk about Traveller 5. Last time we spoke, you were doing a Kickstarter, and I think you've delivered on that since. How was that received? Did your Kickstarter go off well? And
it did. I always overpromise. Say, I'm going to do this and that and that and that and this. I've basically filled what there is that people wanted, but not quite. I'm getting a good response. This version of Traveller 5 is easier to handle because it's broken into 3 books, just like the original 3 little black books. So there's characters and combat, and there's starships, and there's worlds and adventures. It's useful books for the dedicated player. And the people that have it are happy with it. It's hard to ship that book. It's like 8 pounds. I ship it in a double box, a box and then some corner styrofoam and then a bigger box so that it doesn't get bumped or broken or damaged in shipping. It's a nice piece. I'm working on something I've overpromised. I've said I wanted to do, and that is a starter kit for people who, with an adventure in it and basic rules on how to play this game. And that's my current project. That's what I've been working on.
And when do you expect to be done with that? Before our next interview?
By your next interview, I expect to buy our next interview. Yeah. Hey, let's just talk about Mayday here for a minute.
Sure.
Mayday is the Mayday thing. People come up with May the 4th be with you for Star Wars, and we beat them by 4 days because we've had Mayday as our day for a long time. And I just try and bang that drum early for people to know about Traveller. But
I think it's a great pun or play on words, and I like it much better than May the 4th be with you. So yeah, Mayday, Mayday is the classic quote off the original box set. And what better day for Traveller Day than Mayday?
No, Mayday, yeah. And then we have the Emperor's Birthday, which is in the end of August. And we have Traveller's Birthday, which is, I forget the date now, but June, July. It's just a way of putting Traveller in front of people.
Yeah, that's great. We've got a lot of participation in this event this year. We've got more interviews and stuff going on. There's a charity game going on, and I encourage people to go over and check that out. I'll put details in the link and in all the Mayday promotional material. And I think it's a great opportunity, like you say, to put Traveller in front of people, make brand awareness or awareness of the game itself. A lot of times I tell people, hey, you want to come and play some RPGs with us, and I tell them about Traveller, and it's like they never heard of it. And I'm like, how could you not have heard of it? It's like the only sci-fi RPG. It's been around since the 70s. Oh no. So then they play a couple of games and they're like, I love this game. I had two groups of 5 going for a year, and now I'm on the second year with one of those groups. The first group fizzled out after a year, but yeah, it's got a lot of staying power. It's a great game, and I think just more people need to be exposed to it. And I think events like Mayday, or people doing promotional things around. I've been very fortunate to get sponsors for prizes and stuff that we give out, and so everybody's been super nice about that, and kind of helping to promote Traveller in general. And so thank you to everybody who's done that.
I appreciate it too. I mean, we're a great community. I'm always, forgive me, I keep banging the drum of gaming as a great community, that people like each other and interact with each other, support each other, instead of this cutthroat competition of hoping the other company will die. So, everybody cooperates and everybody enjoys it. Just like I feel bad for our local stores.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some space at a local gaming store. They have a Magic Night, and I'd like to go and host a Traveller Night and get some newcomers into the game. Provide them some pre-rolled characters and a little short one-stop adventure, and see how that goes.
Something. I have something called Can You Survive, and I need to send you some for that, because it's a basic self-contained game.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's generating characters, so let's interact about that later. But
okay. Aside from RPG gaming, what are some of your other favorite pastimes? Do you enjoy sports or fishing or any other hobbies?
I enjoy exercise, running, biking, walking, that sort of thing. That's a lot of fun. My wife and I are involved in some classical music scholarship work for kids. We do that a lot. So
that's great.
We have a good time.
Fantastic.
I've got to go. My time's running out.
Okay. Well, let's wrap this up then.
Okay.
Let's see. All right, because we're pretty much at the end of my questions anyhow. I was going to ask you what your plans are for the next year, and how can people find your products and get a hold of you?
Well, they should go to traveller5.net. 2 L's, number 5, traveller5.net, which really shows them the stuff that's going on. I mean, I haven't even touched on current product list and all that sort of stuff, but it's worth going there and looking at it.
All right, then.
Okay. Thank you for hosting this, and Mayday. Mayday.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Well, that's the end of our show, folks. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as CyborgPrime, and I've been talking with Marc Miller of Far Future Enterprises. Mark, thank you so much for participating and coming up with a Mayday. And one more time, can we have your contact info and how to find your product line?
Traveller5.net.
That's it. Okay.
Or farfuture.net. Either one works.
All right, great.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. That's all for now, travelers. Until next time, happy traveling.